Okay, it's the off season, and you know what that means. It is time to talk ostriches. Yes, the Orlando Ostriches, which if you are new to this channel and are very confused, allow me to explain. A couple years ago, I created my own NFL team called the Orlando Ostriches. I had a whole expansion draft thing that was worked out, but mostly I had to just add players through the draft and through free agency. I've been kind of upping this every year, having a full off season where I let players walk, I cut players, I sign free agents, and I draft. And so far, it have been going pretty well. The first year, we were okay. I think we finished with the 10th overall pick or 8th overall pick, something like that. But then I traded up to get CJ Stroud, and that move has worked out very well, as CJ Stroud has been a very effective quarterback for us Ostrich fans. Year 2 of the Ostriches was a smashing success. We were able to make it to the postseason. So year 3, a lot of talk about can we improve. Ultimately, let's talk about it. What went right for the Ostriches here in year 3? What went wrong? And then we're going to go through the whole offseason. I'm going to make some adjustments and hopefully be better next year. So first, we're going to go through who was on the team last year. These are the players, and I've separated them by positions. The number next to them is how many millions of dollars is still left on their deal. So for Matt Corral, for example, he has 1 year of $2.3 million. For CJ Stroud, he has 2 years at $9.5 million, and then also an option. So as I mentioned, CJ Stroud been a hit for us, even if maybe we were hoping for a little more year 2. Still been definitely worth the $9.5 million and the capital we used to give up for him. Corral and Zappi are fine backups. The receiving core ended up actually being okay because, Amari Cooper was not worth his price tag, but still an effective player. Diggs was effective before he was before he got injured. Alec Pierce was good last year, and Jacoby Myers was good last year. So multiple good receivers, an okay receiver, and a good receiver until he got hurt. But again, maybe not what we were hoping for when we put as many resources into that position as we did. The offensive line was a bit disappointing. Again, this is where I usually like to try and save some money, going with kind of a hodgepodge group, and it was okay, but it wasn't what I was hoping for. It wasn't what I had the past 2 years, where I kind of did the same thing and actually had a lot of success there. Tight end and running backs, I don't put much resources into that, so I don't get much out of it. Kyron Williams, a big name for the Rams, big name for the Ostriches, but we use PFF grades because I wanted to use that to determine how much value I get. Did not get much value out of Kyron Williams, according to PFF. As for defense, the strength of this team really is Derek Stingley and Jamel Dean, 2 really good corners, and Kendall Fuller ends up being a really nice number 3 corner for us. Was hopeful to get more out of Ennis Rakestraw Jr. when I drafted him in, I believe, the 2nd round last year. You have Brian Cook and Taylor Rapp. Taylor Rapp actually ended up being the second string safety. Cameron Kitchens took his job there. Kitchens was added some value for us last year, so that was nice. And then the linebackers, again, maybe hoping for a little bit more out of Frankie Louvu with a over $11 million price tag, but was okay last year. Finally, for the defensive line and kicker here, defensive line, again, I drafted Drake Jackson and Cameron Thomas, didn't get a ton out of them. I signed Chase Young and Clowney to 1-year deals last year, and it worked okay. Worked totally fine. Was not a smashing success, was not horrible either. And then as for the interior, so a couple of depth pieces, but Kobe Turner wasn't quite as good last year as he was with Aaron Donald, but still an effective player. Got him for cheap for another 2 years. DJ Reader, again, was fine. Byron Murphy, who I drafted in the 1st round, I definitely wanted to get more out of. And then finally, Younghoe Koo, who just had a bad year last year. There's no getting around it. I think I put a lot of resources into the kicking position because it matters. Unfortunately, did not quite get what I wanted out of him. So using the algorithm that I had created previously and then using PFF grades to determine which tier each of these positional categories belongs in, factoring in things like if a guy only has a small snap count because he gets injured, well then, I can't weight his PFF grade the same way I weight someone else's PFF grade. So have to factor all of that in. But ultimately, this is where everybody ended up for each positional grouping. CJ Stroud just barely made the tier 2. I mean, it was close. So we got tier 2 quarterback play, which helps a lot. And this is also where this algorithm has a little bit of room for error here, but that's okay, I think. But yeah, So tier 2 passing, that really helps. Tier 4 offensive line, that's not what we've had in years past. We need to get better at that. Receiving was tier 3. Again, for some of the resources we pumped into that, I don't think that's good enough. Tier 5 running game, that's kind of by design. Run defense was actually still pretty good, and pass rush, got some value there. Coverage, though, still just tier 2 because of the depth. Even though we have Stingley and Jamel Dean, who are both really good, Stingley especially really good, there was a little bit of depth issues, could have been a little bit better there. And then kicking tier 4 wasn't the worst, but ultimately, Orlando Ostriches in year 3, still a good season, right? Over 10 wins. I'll certainly take that. Making the playoffs is an accomplishment. So, hey, in 2 out of our 3 years, we've made the playoffs. That is nice to see. But unfortunately, it wasn't great. So I did the way I do it is for divisions is I do the random number generator, and that's what division we fall in for that year. I was going to do a rotation, but I'm not going to remember year in and year out. So I just decided to do the random number generator. Unfortunately, this year we ended up in the AFC West with the Kansas City Chiefs. So, yeah, weren't quite able to, win the division, but we did finish good enough to make the playoffs. We were the 6th seed. We lost to Baltimore in round 1, so that was our season. Again, not a bad season, but maybe not the step forward that we wanted. So, okay, how do we move forward? I actually think one of the errors I made last year was I think I kind of put too much resources into the front 7 defensively. I paid a decent amount of money, and it doesn't help you that much unless you can have an awesome front 7, which I'm never going to put enough resources in to do that. So I think I have to start nickeling and diming that a little bit more, the same way I do with offensive line. So first, who did I lose in free agency? Stephon Diggs was a free agent. Chase Young, actually really considered re-signing Stephon Diggs, but ultimately just didn't quite have the money to make that work. Going to let Chase Young and Clowney walk as well. Again, they were nice players, but for the price tag they're going to command, I just don't think that's worth it at this point. Amari Cooper was currently on a different deal than he was on with the Bills last year because I've had him for longer. Had some nice years in an ostrich uniform, but ultimately, I think I gotta just save the $20 million. He's not worth that. None of it is guaranteed at this point, so I'm clean out of that deal. And then I lost 4 offensive linemen: Kelvin Beachum, Ted Karras, Mike Glanowski, and Morgan Moses, all walking in free agency. So that's a huge issue, right? It just is. That's something I'm going to have to address. And so I did decide to re-sign one of them. I made 2 non-free agency moves, and these are them. For re-signings, Morgan Moses, I'm going to keep him on board. I actually get him for a lower price tag because he's staying with my team. That's how it works. Price tags go up if you sign someone who signed somewhere else. They go up even more if you sign someone who signed with their original team, but they go down if you re-sign a player, so I get a little bit of a hometown discount for Moses. Also, I decided to go with the trade that the Pittsburgh Steelers went with to get DK Metcalf. Now, I don't have a second-round pick this year because I traded for Stephon Diggs, so I'm using next year's second-round pick. They decide to take my pick instead of Pittsburgh because, hey, we haven't been as good as Pittsburgh consistently, so they trust that our pick will be better. All right, a little bit insulting, but we'll take it. So we get DK Metcalf for a second-round pick in next year's draft. That is his price tag, 5 years, $26.4 million. Some people might say, wait, I thought it was higher than that. You have to remember the reported number was not factoring in. He still has 1 year of his rookie deal left. So the overall tag looks a little bit lower and there's an extra year involved. That's what the actual contract is. Now it's time for some re-signings. And hey, we had a lot of money, actually. The one thing we here with the Ostriches have done a great job of is not overspending. We do a pretty good job at being smart with some contracts. But you know what? Let's throw some money out here. All these contracts aren't going to work, but some hopefully will. First, the top section, we had to improve the O-line, right? We just did. It was an issue, and there's ways to do this without spending too much resources into it. So one thing we're doing is got Tevin Jenkins, who I can't believe that's his price tag. That feels like a steal. I know he has injury history, but still. The good thing about this is you can also add a guy like Mekhi Becton for a 2-year, $10 million deal. And hey, if he has to play tackle, he can. Although we like him at guard, that's where he will play. Drew Dahlman, a great center for the Falcons for a couple years. We're now getting him he's actually our highest paid offensive lineman, a center. But hey, he's a really good one and a young player as well. And then Tyron Smith, who I didn't love this signing, to be honest. There just isn't really a better one on the board right now. So I just felt like I had to go with Tyron Smith just because we need something at the tackle position. Hopefully he'll give us 600 quality snaps for a 1-year deal. And I was able to make that work money-wise. Also, I decided to pump some resources into the outside. I keep saying games are won or lost on the outside. And you know what? I'm putting so much resources into the receiver and corner categories. I want to be tier 1s there. If we can be tier 1s there. There was about 2.5 wins left on the board just in those two categories. If we can add that to our around 10.5 win total, that's, in my view, the easiest way to go from being a competitive team to a championship quality team. So signing Javon Holland, signing DJ Reed, signing Devontae Adams, and I think DeAndre Hopkins is a nice flyer at $5.5 million as well. So I decided to add all of those guys. So that is my free agency period, but now it's the draft. And for the draft, like I said, don't have a second round pick. I had to take the place of somebody, so I used the Pittsburgh Steelers as they finished closest to where we finished in terms of our seasons. So now the Steelers don't get a draft. We do get a draft. Let's get into who we drafted. And this is how things went. I actually decided to trade up in this draft because I don't think it's the deepest draft in the world, but Terriota McMillan was still available at 17, and there was a couple teams that maybe would go wide receiver coming up on the board, so I had a 21st pick. I traded up to get him. I had to give up a 5th round pick as well, but I like that trade. I think he's a really good player, and the one thing us Ostrich fans have been able to celebrate is how well our first round picks have usually done with Stroud and Stingley. Okay, didn't go great last year, but hopefully we can get back on track with this one. Also, in the 3rd round, I went with Chris Paul Jr. But this was maybe a bit of a choice for need, but also I liked some of the receivers I could get a little bit later as well, and mostly receivers were the top guys on the board at that point. Didn't love going tackle there, and I just felt like, okay, he's close enough to the top on the board. He's a quality player. Fills a role. We do need another linebacker, off-ball linebacker, so sure, let's do that. Kyle Williams, again, always good to be drafting receivers at this spot, and it was good value as well. And then my last 2 picks, I'm just worried about the tackle situation. I usually hate drafting for need. It's something I almost never do. I've barely ever done it in this exercise, but I felt like we needed some depth there. So again, a 6th and a 7th round pick on tackles. We'll see if either of them work out. But yeah, I do kind of like John Williams' analytics, so we'll see. I mean, again, this is where the exercise gets weird because for my team, there's a good chance these guys would play. But obviously, the way I calculate it is how well of a season they end up having. These 2 guys probably aren't going to play. So still, I try to keep it as true to how I would actually do things as possible. So ultimately, that was my draft. And now I have my team for 2025. To go over it again, and sorry that it is small numbers, but again, just to reminder of how it works, the number you see next to the player's name is how many millions of dollars they are projected to get. The more times you see it, that is the more years they will be getting it. So quarterback, again, Stroud still has this year and next year of his rookie deal, and then you have a 5th-year option. So this is when we got to be going hard. This is when we got to really be trying to be great right now, which is why I spent so much money in free agency. But you see the receiving core, again, it was already a solid receiving core. Hopefully this could put it over the top because we still have Alec Pierce. We still have Jacoby Myers, who were, nice pieces. We've now added Kyle Williams and Terriota McMillan in the draft, who should be really nice piece, especially, McMillan hopefully can be a number 1 quality guy. DK Metcalf at his best can be a number 1 quality guy, and at worst is like a amazing number 2. Devontae Adams, who can still play at a high level. DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, and hey, it's it's receivers, so if I have to have Kyle Williams play special teams his first year, I can do that as well. Definitely pumping a lot of resources into there. Hopefully, this can make it like a tier 1 receiving core. You then have the offensive line, who, again, completely reworked, but Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses will be the tackles. Hopefully they can stay healthy. Connor Williams, Tevin Jenkins, Mekhi Becton, and Drew Dahlman are 4 interior guys. And again, this is kind of what I like about this situation is if someone gets hurt, at least Becton does have tackle experience. He can kick out wide there. So there is that. We then have John Williams and Trey Wedhig, who are backup tackles as well, who I drafted, and if they have to play, they have to play. The next chart, just to finish up the offense, again, still not the best at tight end and running back. It is what it is. But the secondary, again, was a really good secondary last year, was the strength of our team. Let's improve on our strengths. Why not be great here instead of really good? So I added DJ Reed. We still have Stingley and Jamel Dean. Dean does tend to miss sometimes, so having an extra guy will matter because top 3 corners are what goes into the algorithm here. So hopefully having 3 really good ones, with Kendall Fuller being kind of the guy who has to come in due to injury, can help. And hey, maybe we get something out of Rakestraw Jr. this year as well. Javon Holland, who again, we weren't great safety-wise last year. Hopefully him and either Brian Cook or Cameron Kitchens can be a great safety duo. And for the off-ball linebacker stuff, maybe we get a little bit more value out of Edwards and Luvu this year, and Chris Paul Jr. as well. The first round pick, or the third round pick, can hopefully add some value. And finally, for our D-line, I forgot to mention this, but I also signed Derek Barnett and Dennis Gardick to kind of some smaller deals just because we needed some edge stuff here, right? I mean, the edge was looking rough. I didn't really want to go there in the draft. I would have maybe done it with a first-round pick, but I liked McMillan more. I didn't want to go into draft needing a certain position, so adding those guys was, I think, the right call. You then have, for the interior, still an interior I like. Kobe Turner's really good. I think DJ Reader could have a better year if he stays healthy, and we'll see if Brian Murphy can add more. I spelled his name wrong there, but we'll see if he can add more. And I decided to keep on Young Wei Koo. Let's trust him. Let's hope he can get it back, because he can be really good. And even last year wasn't tier 5. He was tier 4, although I want more from him this year. So yeah, that is my team. How do I feel about it going into 2025? I feel pretty good. Ultimately, my logic with this kind of stuff is like, I can't just go into a certain, and I think this is maybe the biggest takeaway to have with a team like this or with football in general, is you have 3 receivers typically on a play, maybe 4, but if you can't just go into a season saying, okay, these 3 or 4 guys will be our guys and will be good if they are new players, because they don't always work out. Some percentage of this stuff is going to go wrong, and you kind of have to put more resources into something if you want to be great there. Of course, you kind of have to choose where you're going to put your resources. Again, every fan gets excited when their favorite team signs a big name free agent, but that always means that that's money you're not putting elsewhere, and you do kind of have to pick and choose. That's why I like the strategy of nickeling and diming offensive line, which, again, usually has worked. Wasn't great last year, but at least wasn't a mess last year. I wasn't the Texans last year, right? Because there is a lot of comparisons between the Texans and I feel like the Ostriches, having Stroud and Stingley being their 2 best players. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I view this team right now. And again, it's interesting. I guess the one other thing I should mention is I am going to do the same extension to Stingley that the Texans did as well. So that wasn't on the chart, but I'll do that as well, because eventually that's kind of what has to happen for this team to have long-term success, right? It's hard to be great right away because I haven't had 10 years of drafting players who have maybe been with the team for forever. I've only had a couple years of drafting, so you kind of have to be really smart with free agency in this situation. But ultimately, it's been a fun exercise. Hey, back-to-back playoffs. Hopefully I can get it for a 3rd year, but this time actually make some real noise once we get there. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.